President Donald Trump has created a sense of hostility within the American people that has never been seen before. Every president has had their fair share of supporters and haters. In the past, while Republicans and Democrats have always had their differences, they were typically still able to remain friendly or keep political talk out of their relationships. We are now at a point where we are willing to drop lifelong friendships over a person's opinion on Trump. Our current president has completely transformed the traditional meaning of president and Republican. Through his catty tweets and petty name-calling, he has broken down all levels of professionalism that has historically been seen as standard for how presidents and elected officials should behave. In addition to this, a large amount of Trump's policies are the literal opposite of everything that the Republican Party stands for, and yet he has managed to completely change the rhetoric of one of the top two political parties in the United States. David Lauter wrote a piece for the Los Angeles Times magazine that was posted August 22nd, 2019, which expresses all of the ways in which Trump has redefined what it means to be president and what it means to be a Republican. While this argumentation and debate course has taught me how important it is to be respectful of other people's viewpoints and opinions, the very act of stepping back and putting someone else's life experiences and biases into perspective to help conclude why a person may have a certain belief can be very important. However, certain opinions should not be tolerated, especially when they are detrimental to the well-being of the people we have living here in the United States, regardless of their citizenship status. The famous saying, "Drastic times call for drastic measures," sums this up very well. In terms of the short-term effects of moving to be more civil in discussions, we will see the same greedy and uncaring people getting away with running our country in ways that are oppressive and exclusive. Billionaires, for example, should not have unlimited political power to control elected officials voting on policies such as the moral existence of even having billionaires in a country when so many people live below the poverty line. People can protest all they want, but sometimes revolution is necessary to bring forth substantial changes. France was once in a similar situation where a majority of the wealth was controlled by a small percentage of people at the top. In addition to this, the middle and lower class families were being taxed heavily and imprisoned without exception when they were unable to pay. Mythloc.edu gives details about how the Sans Colette party took over France from September 5th, 1793 to July 24th, 1794, and publicly murdered the agents of the state who enforced the unjust taxation. This vast financial divide led to what is commonly referred to as Le Terreur, or the Reign of Terror. This revolution was a chance for the poor people in France's voices to be heard, and to also send a message to neighboring European countries that if they don't change their ways too, the same thing may occur on their own turf. Revolution is by no means civil, but it is effective, especially when different marginalized groups come together as one and fight for one another. In the United States, we see oppressed groups peacefully protesting and speaking their minds in a civil manner, only to have the government tear gas them and try to silence them by force. Our government labels revolutions involving force to be terrorist acts, but will never acknowledge the many ways in which they inflict terror on their own people. The very act of defining terrorism or deciding what is or is not legal is rhetorical in the sense that the government will always choose ways to govern without putting restrictions on their own actions. The long-term impact of trying to remain civil also is that it reinforces the idea in people's minds that their voices don't matter. Taking things back to the example that I gave in my previous video about the environmental activist Greta Thunberg, if we can't change for the millions of children that in the country that are begging for our lawmakers to focus on helping save our planet, how much more civil can we get? My opponent argues that being civil will make people less inclined to be active in politics. There is no link to make this claim based on the fact that so many people, especially young folk, choose not to vote because they feel like their votes don't matter. With decades and decades of civil activism and protests resulting in no change, it makes sense why so many people throw in the towel and accept defeat based on lack of change and progress. If we were less civil and maybe pushed towards a revolution, maybe we would see the changes that we've been looking for. Thank you.